have the data to support making a professional decision, or I don't. And sometimes, like Professor Kane said, there are things that are going on in that person's life that are more important. Go ahead, palm down there for me. More important than the polygraph exam is that day. To give you an example, we had a bank. The bank had $4 million of it embezzled from the bank. And we had the bank vice president in there taking the polygraph exam, and he comes back as inconclusive. And I've done about 3,000 exams in my career, and about 80% of the time when somebody comes back as inconclusive, they're lying. They're just not reacting significantly enough for us to be able to make that professional call. And so we get him into his post-test interview and ask him, okay, how do you not know whether you stole $4 million from your bank? He said, well, Brian, it's 12:30 at 1 o'clock. The woman I've been having an affair with for the last 2 years is showing up on my doorstep. And if I'm not home, she's talking to my wife. It takes me 20 minutes to get home. Can I leave now? Sure, go home. Go home. He goes home, takes care of business, comes back 2 days later, and he passes with flying colors. The fact that his 2-year affair was about to blow up in his face was more important to him than $4 million missing from his bank. So sometimes things are going on. I mean, if somebody just had a close family member die in the last couple of weeks, that's not a good time to take a polygraph. They're grieving. Somebody just had a car accident. They got whiplash. They're in pain. Again, not a good time for them to take a polygraph. We can always wait weeks, if not months, to give somebody a polygraph to make sure that they are both mentally and physically in the right frame of mind to be able to take a polygraph. So what we see up here, we've got 2 blue lines. Those are the respiration, chest and abdominal. We've got a green line. That's the electrodermal, measuring the fingers. Red line is the cardio, and then the black line is our motion sensor pad. If you'll just pick your right foot up and put it down for me. Perfect. Okay, so you can see how that black line at the bottom moves there. If we see them moving, then we know they're not doing the things they're supposed to be doing on the test, because they're supposed to sit still, look straight ahead, etc. All right, so what we're asking him is just simply about numbers on a piece of paper. So I'm going to ask him, regarding the number written on the piece of paper in your pocket, is it the number? We're going to go in order on a list, 1 through 10. I have instructed him to answer no every single time for me. Obviously that means once he's going to be lying, but that's, again, an important part of the test. I want to make sure his body reacts how I should expect it to. Now, the other thing he does, it gives me 9 examples of what he looks like when he tells me the truth. Because by answering no every time, he can only lie once. He's only got 1 piece of paper, which means he can only have 1 number. Every other time, he has to be telling me the truth. Now, most people when they come in to take this test, they realize, I'm going to be taking another test after this, and so they are highly invested in this test. But for him, since he is not going to be taking another test, we have to make sure he's highly invested. So if I don't get his number, Ben Franklin's yours, and you'll be buying first rounds this weekend in football. All right, looks good. Let's get a little air here, and we'll see how many of you guys can identify which number he's got and how many can't. So, polygraph's a great place to get hired right now. Federal government with Edward Snowden and all those things are going on. They're quadrupling the number of polygraphs they're doing in their counterintelligence intelligence department. And you coming out with a Juris Doctorate, you're going to be really high on the G scale for the federal government. So if you want a good opportunity, great place to be. All right, another thing you're going to see is we got full audio and video. Right there. Looks good. Please remain still. Look straight ahead. The test is about to begin. Regarding the number written on the piece of paper in your pocket, is it the number 1? No. Is it the number 2? No. Is it the number 3? No. Is it the number 4? No. Is it the number 5?
No.
Is it the number 6?
No.
Is it the number 7?
No.
Is it the number 8?
No.
Is it the number 9?
No.
Is it the number 10?
No.
This test isn't over. Please remain still while I take the instrument out of operation. You can relax. Okay, now normally when I run this test, I'm going to run it 3 times. I'm going to run it forward, 1 through 10, like I just did. I'm going to run it backward, 10 through 1, and then I'm going to run it in random order. And we know when we first start a test, we're always going to get some responses on there just because they're starting a test. It's called an orienting response. And so we don't want the possible numbers that he is going to be lying to. You can go out and see. Nice job, thanks. We don't want the first couple of numbers that we ask about to be the possible correct answers. And so we had 6 cards, but we did 10 numbers. So the first couple numbers, 1 and 2, were not possible numbers. And then because we're going to run it backwards, 9 and 10 were not possible answers. So the one where we run it backwards were there. So the only possible numbers that he had on this test were the numbers 3 through 8. So by show of hands, how many of you think it was number 3? Number 4? Number 5? Okay, so, all right, number 6? Number 7? Number 8? All right, now how many of you seen like Meet the Parents, Pens and Paper type polygraph? All right, big disadvantage with that is called an analog polygraph, and with the pens and paper, if the pen hits the bottom of the paper, you start losing data. And so when you look up here and you've got this blue arrow that's there right after number 8, that's me readjusting the tracing and recentering it with that red arrow that's there so that the data is there. With computerized, it's all there. It's just how I can give you a graphic representation for you to see it. The other big advantage with the computerized polygraph is we can have a computer scoring algorithm that will look at the measurements we've got, compare them with approximately 10,000 known FBI, CIA test charts, and give us the straight statistical probability that this person is being truthful. So I will score the test the same way that every other polygraph examiner does, and I've got my opinion, and certainly any human being is going to have some type of biases no matter what they do. And that's part of being human. But with the computer, it doesn't have biases. All it looks and says is, what does this data score out when we compare it with all of these other known test cases? And so I have built-in quality control when I offer opinion. If I show this and the computer shows the exact same thing, then I'm going to feel really good as an examiner going, I've got independent computer verification. The big disadvantage with the old pens and paper is you have to have another polygraph examiner who can score that. And you know what? Sometimes that plays out. All right, well, when we talk about this particular number here, we had a pretty wide spread. But my $100 is on number 5. Number 5, okay, let's talk about why. This test was called a known lie test, called an acquaintance exam. It's also called a peak of tension test. He knew exactly where he was going to be lying on this test because he knew what number he had, and he knew the order that the numbers were going to be coming in. And so up until the point where he lies, that pressure continues to intensify. And if you look at his cardio, for him, that is his biggest reactor. All right, you see that go all the way up, and then after number 5, it peaks. And then as soon as you get past number 5, his blood pressure falls off the chart. Off the chart, just 6, 7, bang. He's all the way relaxed. That pressure's all the way gone. He knows he's being truthful the whole rest of the way there. So now I, as a polygraph examiner, having properly identified that he's got a number 5, his body is physiologically reacting in the ways that we would expect it to, I can move on to that specific issue exam or that pre-employment exam and know, hey, if I see the things that are going on here at number 5, I know he's my guy. But if I see the things going on there at 6, 7, 8, all these other ones, I know he's not my guy, and I need to move on to some other people. And with polygraph, again, only being court admissible in one state currently, you have to think about what's the major use of it being. Well, it's all about law enforcement and either doing pre-employments or their criminal investigations. And you as future attorneys, whether it ever comes in a courtroom that you're ever going to be in or not, you still need to know how to appropriately use polygraph to your best advantage, because there are absolutely ways that you can take and do that to best further your case. I mean, everybody has limited resources. I mean, even attorneys, if you're, $1 million roller, you've only got so many investigators that you can hire to get things done. Same thing with police departments. They've got limited resources. How do you say it? Is it DeKalb or DeKalb? Okay, because in Georgia it's DeKalb. All right. They can't hire all the detectives that they would like to investigate all criminal offenses at the level that they like to. They have limited resources, and so they have to be able to allocate those resources to best solve their cases. And so that's where these specific issue exams come in, is it doesn't matter whether you pass or fail. What it's trying to do is help the police allocate their resources for their investigations. Because when you come in and you fail, well, the fact that it's not coming in court in most of these states means we've got to go find the evidence that is going to be court admissible to be able to prove our cases. And by using polygraph, they are going to be able to more effectively allocate their resources and solve more cases. Because if we know we got the guy who failed, now it's just a matter of going and finding that evidence. But if that guy passes, now it's a matter of where do we go find those next people, or where do we go find that other evidence to try and get this particular case solved. Now, when we talk about diagnostic testing, that was one of the things that Professor King brought up. A CT scan, X-ray, they're diagnostic. Well, what are we diagnosing with polygraph? We're diagnosing the autonomic physiological responses that a person has during a particular test. And the things we measure with blood pressure, pulse rate, changes in sweat gland activity, changes in respiration, those are things that are getting controlled by your autonomic nervous system. And polygraph, it works on what's called the fight, flight, or freeze response to a dangerous situation. When people get into danger, they have primal human responses. They either run away, they stay and fight and deal with it, or they lock up like a deer in the headlights. And if you think about dangerous situations you've been in, I'm sure most of you drive a car. If you're driving a car and you've got some deer that runs out in the middle of the road right there, you're jacking on your brakes, and all of a sudden you realize your heart rate's shooting through the roof. You got little sweaty palms or clammy hands. You're not relaxed anymore. You're breathing a little bit differently, and nobody consciously thinks about it. It's not like you can say, "Okay, pour somebody right for him, go." Nobody can consciously do that. Anything that we get is going to be controlled by your body automatically without you having to consciously think about it. And with polygraph, it's the fear of detection, of deception. People are afraid that they are going to get caught lying. And if they are lying, there is a negative consequence that is going to be associated with that lie. If you're in a criminal situation, the negative consequence is what you might get convicted, you might get your liberty interest taken away, and going down that route. And when we're talking about x-rays and MRI scans, the doctors are making life and death decisions based on these medical tests, the same way that people are making very important decisions with polygraph where your liberty interests are going to be at stake. When I did my Juris Doctorate, one of the things that I was looking at is litigation, and that was a certificate program that they had there. We had to look at the composition of juries. And juries today are not a jury of our peers. You don't have a whole bunch of people with advanced degrees, lawyers, doctors, dentists. If they're smart enough to have an advanced degree, they're smart enough to get out of jury service. The people you see sitting on your juries, typically now,
are retired people, government employees, and Billy Bob from the trailer park. Who do you want to terminate your liberty interest? You want somebody who has to be state licensed, somebody who has to do 60 hours and maintain best practices in their particular field, or do you want somebody who's going to fall asleep, who's worried about sorting your mail, or only passed high school because their football coach liked them? I know a couple hundred polygraph examiners. I'd much rather put my liberty interest in their hands than the people that we see sitting on our typical juries. So it'll be interesting to see moving forward. Alaska is this close to having polygraph admissible. Right below their state Supreme Court, they have 2 justices that say, you know what, we should be admitting this because it does have a known error rate. 37 peer-reviewed different studies, 12% error rate. All right, 12% error rate for CT scans, MRI scans, and we hear regular, competency hearings based on tests that are only 60 to 67% accurate. It's a super accurate test, but it's not perfect. And as long as they hear that it's not perfect, and you need to make those determinations based on weighing of the evidence, based on the expert testimony that you're hearing, I think polygraph has an absolute place. But even if it never gets into another courtroom, you as future attorneys need to find a good polygraph examiner because there are so many uses outside of the courtroom that you're going to be able to take advantage of that's going to make your practice better, whether you're prosecutor, defense, civil. There are all kinds of opportunities, and I get calls every week from attorneys who need to have polygraphs done on their client. So figure out how to use it to your best advantage, and there are lots of opportunities for you. Thank you.
Mr. King's going to go for a few minutes, and then we'll conclude.
Thank you. Ms. Morris indicated that, there are many peer-reviewed studies. In preparing for this, I looked up some literature and quite honestly, I haven't found those particular studies, but I can cite at least one that I have found, and that's from the National Academy of Science in 2002 relating to polygraphs. Basically speaking, they came to the conclusion that polygraph testing is deficient in fixed standards, which make it unscientific. In a report they wrote, the inherent ambiguity of the physiological measures used in the polygraph suggested further investment in improving the polygraph technique, and interpretation will only bring modest improvements in accuracy. So I think we still have to fall back on the fact that there is no general acceptance of this in any community in the United States, as I understand it. The Sixth Amendment to the United States Constitution provides us with trial by jury, and it's been that way. And I think that in general, you have and you've always had juries attempting, using their best efforts to assess the credibility of witnesses. I think it's fair to say that polygraph examinations, at least in the present scientific state, will not aid those juries. They will usurp the function of those juries. I think they'll confuse them. I think juries will put too much weight on the testimony of that type of an expert, and I think it's not ready for 702 standards. It's not ready. It does not meet the Daubert standards. I'm going to put my reliance on 12 people who look at the witnesses testify and the defendant testify, hopefully, and let them make proper determinations. In any event, thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen, both so much for providing all that information. And that's what we want to do as a Federalist Society. We want to give you as much information as possible and then let you decide where you stand on these issues. So thank you very much for coming, everyone. Like us on Facebook and stay tuned for more details. We're going to have a fun event next semester, Scotch, cigar, social night type of thing. So stay tuned, and as always, ask